Here he is now, Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
God bless you, Pastor Paul. Doing okay. How about yourself?
Doing great. I hope you're not too busy. It sounds like there's a lot of things going on. We're 60 days outside of an election. The Middle East is changing before my very eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And the heavens are shaking up there, Mike.
You better believe it. Seems like a conflagration of things that are unavoidable these days.
Mike, let's talk for a minute because, you know, you've been talking about the 5 waves of energy for 7, 8 years. And we just have the BBC yesterday, BBC science correspondent Jonathan Amos in the Science and Environment section of the BBC came out with the cosmic signal that rattles the Earth after 7 billion years. They're saying that 2 black holes collided and that there's 50 waves of energy headed toward the Earth with unbelievable gravitational effect. I guess my first question is to you, is this part of the 5 waves of energy, or is this a separate situation and we have a perfect storm coming upon us? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, that's a cover. Remember a long time ago I told you that as we continue to get closer to the times where these things will become, you know, quite noticeable, they're going to come up with every single scenario, feed that to the public as an explanation as to what's happening. So expect to hear just some things you never expected to hear. Number one, right now, because hardly anybody, well, let's just say most people can't see a black hole out there in space, right? So they could literally say anything they want to say as an excuse to cover for some of the disruptions that are coming into the solar system. Isn't it funny how they, you know, just all of a sudden 2 black holes collided and they send shock waves towards Earth, right? All of a sudden. So, and it takes a long time, by the way, for those waves to get to Earth, right?
Yep.
But they plant these ideas in people's heads because they can always go back and save face and say, well, you know, we thought that was it, but it was something else. But they just won't succeed in that. Now, they will deceive the majority of the world. I have to keep my anchor in prophecy, and in prophecy, Jesus said that the world knew not till the flood came and took them all away, and it's going to be like that again. So the world will accept some of the theories that these scientists are coming up with, but we know better, right? We know better. So
what you're saying, Mike, is the 50 waves of energy that are coming as far as they're concerned, or what they're telling us, is 2 black holes collided. This is just to buy time to keep the public amused while preparations are going on by the global elitists on how they're going to deal with the real fallout from the original 5 waves of energy you're talking about. And I'm going to assume, and you don't have to say, but I know you call it a binary system on the outskirts of our solar system. Mathematically, that's what Immanuel Velikovsky says. It was a theory for Jeremiah Stitchin. He had a lot of weird ideals, but that is one theory he had. And then, of course, you have the Bible. You have the Torah that says, look, guys, look at these 10 plagues in Egypt. But at the same time that happened, though, we find out the Peruvians and the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas and different North American Indians and as also Egyptian hieroglyphics and places in Asia all confirmed major events happening at the exact same time as the plagues of Egypt. So, Mike, I guess my question to you, back to the 5 waves of energy, let's say it is the binary system that you're talking about, the mathematical proof is out there, but what do you see happening? Give us a scenario. I think you've told us the next year is going to be huge. Can you give us a scenario going into this winter, next spring? What do you expect to happen on the Earth?
Well, as I'll say it again with the sun, we're going to have an issue with the sun because when a colder star comes in proximity to a active star, our yellow dwarf. We have a yellow dwarf. That's what our sun is, by the way, a yellow dwarf. And we have another object coming inbound, which is very cold. It's going to begin to take energy, substance from our sun to itself once it passes a certain, or gets in close proximity. When this interaction takes place, it's going to cause disruptions, continued disruptions throughout probably, I would say, probably a 4 to 5 year period. And during this time, we're going to notice sharp fluctuations in Earth's geological record is going to just abruptly alter. Weather phenomena that will abruptly alter. There will be devastating forces upon the Earth. And when I say devastating, I mean we're going to live in a very ash-filled environment. What? It's going to get pretty rough. You're dealing with that. You're dealing with probably about 20, 30, 40 times the electric potential in the atmosphere static. We still have disruptions in our magnetosphere, which is causing people to go nuts. So, you throw in all these, one of the major issues is going to be our sun and our atmosphere. And no doubt they're going to cover, we discussed this last year about them covering for what's happening to the sun. Because they can't come up with enough excuses to compensate for the sun's activities. Its chemistry is changing. And, they can't get by that, because if they ever confirm that, that means the only time the sun's chemistry is going to change like that is due to proximity of another star, a twin system that is adjoined to it. And, if they start saying the oxygen, carbon, neon, nitrogen, magnesium, iron, silicon, all these compounds inside the sun that are burning, stop putting off these heavy elements, and most of that turns to the infrared spectrum. They're going to try and make up some sort of an excuse as to why the sun is doing this, but all of us should know that the sun is, we're supposed to be at some type minimum, but that's not what's happening. In fact, there have been some major potential disruptions in the sun. The patterns look like ejections, large ejections are in store for the sun, and they're preparing for it. In fact, some of the chemical changes in the sun actually alerted a lot of government agencies around the world. And because its activity is unusual, right? And when you have something that unusual, that type of chemistry change, there's something is afoot. And then we have inbound, we still have inbound pulses to deal with. We still have an uptick in iron-based materials coming into our solar system. And that's a star killer. That's going to, that will really increase the sun's changes. Anything that happens to the sun is going to change things in the core of our planet, change things in geology also. And because they know through geology, Pastor Paul, they tell this big lie that it took millions of years for the Grand Canyons to form, millions of years for the Appalachia chain to form. They're lying. They know they're lying. There are accurate estimates as to what happened because it's been documented, but they won't let people see the documentation. Just like today, we have people that run around and they record everything that happened. So did they in the past. The Grand Canyons were said to form within about a month's time. It was almost an instantaneous change. The Americas itself was tilted, right? There were certain land masses to the east and to the west of America that are gone now, that will likely resurface, and all of America was not topside. And see, they don't like to admit this. That's just like when they find this is their carbon date, when they find 200,000-year-old maps of the Earth, right? Yeah. Just recently, you know what they dug up? They dug up some more evacuation chambers. You know, we're talking about 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 years old, meaning thousands of feet below the Earth, right? Below the surface of the Earth. They have picked up water evacuation chambers with active uranium in it. You know what that is? That's a nuclear power plant. What? They keep digging these things up all around the Earth. So, there is nothing new under the sun. But we're slowly getting into the time where people begin to realize, with all these finds, they're going to have to change reality for everybody. They're doing a good job with this political stuff going on, but it's not going to work for too long because people are asking questions. Why has uranium been gathered in a chamber where water, clearly you can see concrete water flowing channels in there to cool it off, just like our nuclear power plants. Well, what were they doing with it? How did they position it? Why did they build these perfect spheres to hold the uranium? Why do they have uranium rod type fixtures mixed in with it? And what else is down there? So they dug them up in Africa. They dug them up in the Middle East, parts of the Middle East. They dug them up in America. Part of one is sitting right below Ohio, where they're having a pretty deep archaeological dig. And so stuff like that is being found all over the place. We're talking about springs, right? If you dig down 1,500 feet below the surface of the earth, how can you find perfectly preserved iron springs that have not rusted? Springs that are tiny and some that are humongous. So something was going on back then, right? We should believe the word of God and not be so ignorant, because some of the Hebrew words, when it says they were working metals, it actually implies that they had perfected the working metals and they were molding metals. Most of the stone now, they have found that the stones were melted. They have a process. The greatest engineers on earth right now said that with all the equipment available, with all the computers available right now, we still cannot do what they did with the pyramids. We just simply can't do it. There's not enough, we don't have enough know-how. We don't know how they did it. And then they're digging up these other pyramids that make Egypt look like a bathroom, right? Because there's some massive pyramids inside the earth that somehow mess up all electronic equipment once you start getting near them, because they found out the truth about what a pyramid actually is. Anyway, all this stuff is happening, and they're trying to do their best to cover up the history of Earth so that no one religion can be proven right. We can never forget that the major goal is against Christianity. It's against Christ. They're going to do everything they can to make sure that people can never, ever prove anything of Christ. And I believe the Lord will allow that, because we are to follow Christ by faith. So those two are balanced out, very important. Nevertheless, sooner or later, it's coming out. With all the troubles in the atmosphere, they can't hide that. You can't hide a meteor storm, not a shower.
Let's talk about that.
Some passive shower, but a storm. You can't hide that.
Mike,
once everything is on fire, you can't hide that, right?
No, you can't hide that. And Mike, I'm glad you bring this up now, because just a few days ago there was 200. They found so far 200 meteorites that fell in Brazil. And I've got right here, this was given to me, this was another meteor given to me by Tony Silvestri. This one is pure iron. It was discovered in China in 1968, but it fell from a meteorite. It's a piece of one, and this one's iron. And this one weighs about the same as this one, which Tony gave me, which was found in the Sahara Desert. And it's 75% earthen and the rest iron. So the two weigh almost the same. So, Mike, in Brazil, 200 pieces fell. And people have been flooding there to get it. And they're so rare, the type of meteor they are, that the largest one already sold for almost $27,000. These people, these are people who make $2,000 a year at the best. So what caused this? And it just rained down. They said it rained down like rain. Mike, what is that? Can you help me understand?
When we had remember I said they have unexpected passages, things that come by the earth. That was one of them. That was an unexpected, well, to everybody it's unexpected, not to the ones who actually see it. It's not unexpected to them. We've gone a long way since World War II with radar, so we can see quite a bit. But stuff like that happens every single day. It's just normally it's not that concentrated, right? But for example, I said it last week, and in a couple of days we're going to have some unexpected passage, right? Last week I said that. This week I'll tell you again, we'll have a couple more. And this number will continue to increase and increase and increase until it's unavoidable. There was another happening that a couple of fires were started. There were police eyewitnesses that fires were started from something that fell from the heavens, struck it pretty hard, but it was tiny. Micrometeorites, whatever the case may be, actually penetrated our atmosphere directly to the surface. That means the nature of what falling is changing. We're not dealing with ice. We're dealing with hard substances, right? When our atmosphere is penetrated by rock or by these things, it's not rock. It's normally a heavy element like steel or something like that. And that's exactly what's happening. But the composition of some of these things that are falling, that is a telltale sign that we're in trouble. Because the more iron these things contain, the worse off the sun is going to be. What will eventually happen?
Really? It's because, so like this piece of iron that I've got in my hand, you're saying more and more and more iron is and metal is going to fall, and that's going to mean that, okay, now also when you talk about the sun, you and I talked about this already, you know that it's usually solar minimums and solar maximums are about 11-year cycles. We're only in 2.5 years into this one, and the sun is blowing up and doing all these crazy things, and you're saying they're going to continue to make excuses.
That's right.
Because they don't want to tell us what's really causing the sun to go haywire, and our magnetosphere is going haywire. And now you're saying we got more and more of these rocks coming, okay?
That's right.
So there's no way, I mean, they can only hide this from us so long, right, Mike?
That's it. It's only going to work for so long. And then when too many people are, well, unfortunately, here's what I can foresee happening. This is just my, this is just me seeing where things are going. As we have more and more incursions from the atmosphere, and it actually causes damage and death. Right? They're going to have, people will begin to panic. So what they must do is create some sort of a diversion here on Earth that is equal in measure to the fear that would cause. And what you see right now, if you can remember that, Pastor Paul, what you see right now is a balancing act, right?
Right.
Some of the things that happen here on this planet are their direct correlation to some of the weird things that are happening in the atmosphere, and they will continue to either they're going to get your attention one way or the other. And believe me, this stuff is mathematic in nature. They know about social behavior. They know what makes a person tick. This is what most of the AI programs that are out there, they are to figure out what makes us move left and what makes us move right. They're not concerned about making a more power efficient battery or something like that. They've already done that. Most of the sciences right now today are deal with social behaviors, and what they're doing is they're actually beginning to maneuver which direction we go in life. For example, let me give you a small example. If I were working on a project and I didn't want anybody involved in that project, right, I would dig up a stink or have some sort of a conflict or something like that I could put before the people that the people could believe in. And then I would stoke the fire behind that. While they're tied up with that, I can go ahead and finish my project. This is precisely what they're doing, which is why it is, at some point, all of us, I mean, everybody is going to have to take a step back and look at the world one more time and say, is this stuff for real? Is what's happening, is this orchestrated? Am I being played here, or is it for real? Because about 15 years ago, I had a conversation with some individuals, and it was a very open conversation, but they echoed one of the things that I normally tell others now. When you see serious individuals who have formed and helped to maintain this country vanish and disappear, and you can no longer find them, and all you find are alternatives, right? These individuals that they would never allow to come into the front of anything, you better watch out, because that means most of your heavy hitters, your valuable individuals that they count valuable, are now secured. They're being secured. And so what you see, what most people see in front of them is almost like a diversionary tactic. I hate to put it that way, but like this, there are parts of it that are real. There are other parts that are not. And Pastor Paul, what they do is they make a person believe in the cause by which they fight for. This goes from the top down. That means... Well,
are we seeing that, Mike, in the political arena right now? I mean, there's fires everywhere in the political arena right now. And they're getting a lot of people to believe their cause, aren't they?
Yeah, but how you do that, Pastor Paul, is you take an honest person. I'm going to just go ahead and tell you how it works. You take an honest person, right? And that will be your target. You take that honest person, you begin a manipulation campaign against that honest person, knowing that if the honest person believes in what they're doing, they're going to fight for their cause passionately. People believe passion. people believe persistence, right? They can always discern that. And so what they do is they take honest people and corrupt them that way. The person never knows they don't know they're corrupted, right? This is why we need saints in the world. We need believers in the world with Christ, because there's no way anybody in the world can escape this, because they don't know. And the only way a person can truly know this is either be on the inside, know of these operate. I'm sure that some of the folks you talk to, Pastor Paul, can confirm exactly what I'm saying, and that it never ends. It just gets worse and worse. But I tell you, prayer can break most of these things, right? But it really takes a lot of work. We're not going to do it sitting on a couch or something like that. No. It takes a lot of work, right? We need more copies of you and me and everybody else that's out there trying to get the word out, because Christians, this is a good time for them to be active. Right?
Mike, we'll be right back with you in a moment. What Mike's telling you, wait till he brings out his presentation in Deep State Uncovered. We'll be right back with Mike from around the world in just a moment. October 30th and 31st, the most powerful webinar of the year, Deep State Uncovered, where the Illuminati, the shadow government, and those that operated secret societies, not only in this nation, but around the world, as a global cabal, a beast kingdom, rises in the book of Revelation. We will uncover all of it. Deep State Uncovered.
They're deceiving us with so much. It's hard to mention most of it.
Folks, Mike from around the world is with us tonight. Of course, he's one of the speakers in the Deep State Uncovered. Let me just tell you something. I talked to Doug Hagman yesterday. And I said, Doug, how's it coming? Because he's been involved in an investigation. And he shared with me something I can't share, not here, but he said, you won't believe. And he told me. And I about fell out of my chair. And he said, I'm going to bring it out in Deep State Uncovered. So, guys, it's going to be unbelievable. Lisa Haven is going to also, her presentation. And, of course, you got Mike from around the world here, which is going to expound a little bit more on the secret serpent brotherhood, the brotherhood of the serpent, I think he calls them. We're going to find out a whole lot of stuff. Also, Laura Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower, is going to expose the deep state, she says. So there's a lot coming up, guys. I'm serious. Steve Quayle, well, you know what he'll do. So, and there's more. We're going to tell you who the other speakers are soon. Mike, speaking of secret things being hidden, let's talk about it. You mentioned just a few minutes ago the pyramid, that there's special powers with the pyramid. Is it can you explain to us, expound on that a little bit?
Well, you have the Egypt. Let me tell you about Egypt. Egyptians are prideful, right? The keepers of the pyramids that explore them and so forth and so on in Egypt, they're prideful. And what they told these people in Egypt is the Egyptians, they want to be known as the ones who were responsible for building such a megalith, right? So they're prideful behind that. They normally advocate that, yes, this is built by man, is what they continue to say, right? These are tombs. So people believe what Egypt is putting out there. It's not the truth. They have an inner chamber in the pyramids that they have already seen, Pastor Paul. Listen, most people have to take a small little device to go into the cracks of something to see. We don't have to do that anymore. And that secret is out in public. Let me tell you how. During that explosion in the Middle East, do you not know they detected a person? Their vitals were detected. Their blood was detected. They haven't even reached the person. The person is under debris, and they're still alive right now. They counted the heartbeats. These are through sensors.
What?
You don't have to have a camera to see anymore, right? You can see through sound. You don't have to have a camera. Just to let everybody know. And so they have already seen inside the pyramids. They've already seen this. They've seen inside the pyramids. They've seen below the pyramids. Well, they have an accurate rendering of what's actually going on.
So is there secret compartments or rooms in the pyramid?
There's almost like a reactor within the pyramid itself, and there is a big, huge chamber underneath the pyramid, underneath the Sphinx. The one in Alaska is still active, the one that nobody can get near, really. The one in the Grand Canyons, it vibrates from time to time, and they're all tied in together. They're all lined with each other, right? They point precisely to each other.
Yeah.
But there's some massive ones that sit below them. Right, because this world, and they found out the lower they dig, the more they're finding more of these things. They're finding out there was an international cooperation between what they were doing. Right. They also found a lot of scar points inside the structures. So all this talk about they're utilized for, they're utilized for tombs and this, that, and that's ridiculous. They kept the tombs and everything out on the outskirts of where the reactionary parts of this thing is. And if anybody knows about electronics, if they know how a transistor is built, a pyramid almost mimics, well, it's closer to a MOSFET. But it mimicked the materials inside are almost like a semiconductor. The entire pyramid's like a big, huge, ginormous semiconductor. And what it does, because a transistor can control the flow of electrons. This would control the flow of bio-based energy with electrons, protons, and whatever else you can throw at it.
Whoa, you're starting to sound a little bit like CERN.
Well, it's, but it's almost like I overheard a theory that these pyramids, although they are reactors, they're like giant electronic components, and they worked in tandem.
Okay,
not only with things on the Earth, but they mirrored some of the same structures that are on Mars. I know people think that's crazy, but they already know what's on Mars. They've known about that for a long time. We can build big telescopes now, right? We built the Hubble, never pointed it towards Mars. We pointed out deep space. Of course, they looked at everything through Hubble. We just fall for foolish things, don't we? Imagine the Hubble, right? The Hubble can look in deep space. You telling me they never looked at Mars?
Oh, they looked at Mars.
With Hubble? Come on. Somebody's got to.
Okay, Laura Eisenhower, of course, look, we're going to be interviewing her. I'm going to be interviewing her, and she goes out on a lot of different limbs, but I'm going to keep her focused on the deep state, okay? So everybody know that. But she said she had been recruited by the federal government to be a person that would be sent to Mars on a space base that's already there. Now, she has made that public. She says there's already a base on Mars of the United States. It is a base, and she was recruited by the government if she'd like to go to Mars. She refused to go because of, I won't go into why she said she doesn't want to say why she refused it, but I'm not asking you to confirm that. But Mike, it's leaning more and more like you said before. There's the space program that we see and we're told, and then there's the next one, and then there's one we don't have a clue about. They're 50, 60, 70 years ahead of us in technology, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd see a lot further than that. We're just, first of all, it's a big counterintelligence operation they pulled on the public. It's important to have us educated, above all things, educated in line with a belief system. But a belief system that causes us to look at everything and everybody in a specific way. And if you break away from that educated whole, right, if you start speaking your own subject, you're going to be outcast. And nobody's going to believe you anyway. So if they had a method by which they could alter a person's mind, right? Kind of sounds like some of the drugs we have, how they induce a coma in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you come out of the coma. But the funny part is that there are a couple of people alive who they had what's called a walking coma. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
A walking coma.
It's really weird. I mean, I'm not seeing it.
Essentially, it's a person that cannot recall. They're actually conditioned in a way where they can actually do day-to-day work and have a personality, but they don't remember any of it. This can happen for years, and they can just put the person back to where they used to be, and the person will think, oh, well, what was I doing? Sleep? Yeah, you were in a coma. But in truth, they were living a whole nother life.
Now, Mike, are you talking MK Ultra, or are you talking zombie? Is it almost
zombie. For example, take Mitch McConnell. right? Let's just say somebody got Mr. McConnell under this program. He could live the majority of his life doing what he's doing, and then one day they can restore him or wake him up, and then they would do things electronically and drug related to his mind to get him back to where he used to be. And he wouldn't remember anything past a certain point. Pastor Ball's the same thing. You guys will hear this, and this will give you a moment of pause. You do realize they can take photographs of your dreams. They can produce a picture they can print on a printer of what you have in your mind, images of people, so on and so forth. You do know that, right?
Well, I know that there's people who are able to do that, and somebody could sit there and they're going to have somebody in the other room, like have a wall between them, and that person sitting there can actually see what the other person's drawing on a paper and then draw it.
Oh, well, no, not that. No, they put a probe on your head, one probe on your head, right?
Okay.
And they begin to extract memories, and they put it back into its, they reconstruct it as your brain does, and they print a picture of your memories. We're talking about pure technology.
Okay.
Pure technology.
Yeah, I did hear that, and I heard that if they can do that, they can also put false dreams in your head.
Of course they can. Of course, and there's a book that exists, or let's just say a manual that categorizes dreams, right? And purposes and usages and all this, that, and the other. And so that you can induce stress within a person in a specific way to cause them to get away from, to shy away from certain groups of people, certain countries, certain jobs, certain abilities, to make them deny their own heritage, if you desire, simply by a type of social pressure. They listen, the same way, this is a spiritual statement, but the same way we are connected with love itself. And many people don't understand they are connected with fear in ways that we couldn't possibly understand.
Folks, Mike from around the world here talking about technology and the ability to manipulate our minds. And Mike, I think you told us maybe 4 or 5 years ago that the government even has prophecy teams that study prophecy in the government, and they also and I think you said they also send vans out to churches, sit in a parking lot, and send messages subliminally somehow to see if they can get somebody to do something outside the norm. Is that true?
They do. In fact, there's a book that people can look at themselves, and what it is they give money for grants to universities, so on and so forth, for undocumented tests, right? They get answers to questions, and they pay money for this, and people have long durational studies, and they pay big money for that. And several methods have been employed to do that. Of course, it turns into military weaponry, of which nobody can get the details on because that's classified. But the initial the initialization of these projects is not classified, and a person can, the information's out there. If a person would take the time and look, just like this, you have to have a mindset like this. You have to have a child's mindset almost, saying, well, why can't they see what's on the surface of the moon with Hubble if they can look in deep space? You have to have a mind like that, right?
Right.
You really do. You have to have a mind like that.
And also, if you can see into deep space, then you can see into the deep sea. And so what's going on? Can you tell us what they're doing in Antarctica? I mean, what in the world's going on in Antarctica?
Well, everything outside of accountability, because nobody else can get up there, right? Nobody can get there. And, there's certain parts of Antarctica where no weapons are allowed still to this very day. You cannot bring a weapon. In fact, certain people can't even, if you're one of those with an attitude, say you're a little bit geared towards Christ too much, that type of energy, you're not going to go in certain areas up there. You just won't do it. If you have too much faith, you're not going up there.
Do we have to have
the whole thing?
That's why. So this is why you're saying that the Bible says, Jesus said that even the very elect could be deceived if it were possible. So we got to be led by the Spirit of God, don't we? We got to put on that whole armor of God of faith, because faith is still hard. I think faith, the shield of faith, is still unpenetratable by man's technological advancements. But if we're weak in our faith, if we don't put on that whole armor of God and put that helmet of salvation, they could manipulate us, couldn't they?
Anybody who will believe because they have seen something, is likely manipulated in some way, form, or fashion. Faith is when we believe by an internal confirmation, right? Just like most of the Christians I'd say all the Christians out there, no one ever had to tell us that Jesus was real. No one had to tell us that God exists, and we automatically believe. That type confirmation is a confirmation nobody can fool us about, because it is an internal identification they cannot tamper with. But if we believe in any other way because we have proof, then somebody can provide proof to make us not believe. Yeah. And those people are going to be in trouble. Now, faith, when faith is utilized, we're okay. But if we're not, we're going to turn into, it's going to be like that King Asa. You remember him in the Bible, King Asa? Yeah. Who had because he would not lean upon the Lord. He didn't seek the Lord. He sought scientists. He sought everybody but the Lord to have him, his physicians and everything else. And he died because the Lord said, you sought everybody but me. You're going to die. And the Lord calls us conditions sometimes so we can be a great example for others, right? But in this guy's case, he was going through some things so that he would have an opportunity to call upon the Lord, but he didn't. He called upon the physicians instead of the Lord, and the Lord said, boy, your time is up. And so we have to be careful. Because right now the message is to everybody out there, and believe me, it's working to a degree. They're causing people to live their lives by proof and not by faith. They're causing people to have an appetite for proof and not faith.
Are they also instilling fear? What are they trying to achieve, Mike? What is the powers to be? What's the Illuminati? What are these secret societies? What are they trying to do? I mean, first of all, I know they're trying to take us away from democracy into communism. I know that's happening, but what are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve here?
They serve the one of 1,000 points of light, right? That's Lucifer.
Wow.
The 1,000 points of light, that's Lucifer. That's who they serve, and they know about this. That's their top tier. So the top tier gets other devoted individuals to their cause to follow them. Right? Now, those guys, they exist in power. They like power and money. They like control. They're promised a position so long as they do what they're supposed to do. It's mandated that they murder. It's mandated that they rape. It's mandated that they kill the unborn. This is a mandate to keep their hands dirty, and which puts them in a position where they believe they can never seek Christ. Pastor Paul, this is what they believe. Some of the people in Washington, D.C. right now that people I've seen on TV, they're frightened to death to go seek Christ because they believe if they do, everybody they care for is going to die, and they're going to be tormented while they're still living. But these people seek to take Christians who are of faith and not of science. We don't utilize force. We utilize love, faith, compassion, things of that nature, and strength, right? We're not talking about Christians who sit down and just they have flowers all over their heads and that's how they operate. No, we operate in a very disciplined way. Right? They want that gone because they believe in the rule of force, and that's going to become a very notable type of statement shortly. They believe in the rule of force, which means you manipulate things, you put people under a system to follow, and that's how the world should run. They do not believe that a person has a mind to guide themselves. It's kind of like socialism and communism mixed together with a tyrant, right? But if you disobey in the slightest way, you're gone out of the system. They need folks who believe that they are God. They tout it, they say it all the time, Pastor Paul, that each individual must recognize that they are God and get rid of the foolishness. Here's their quote, the foolishness of Christ, because they said the age of Christ is coming to an end. And I'm not going to give you the year they quoted, but you're right at the door of that year. They said that age is going to end and their age is coming in. The changes you see right now, well, I can't get into it, but people will find out they're called. This is the age of betrayal, and this must happen.
Mike,
in other words, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Will you be able to share that in that deep state? Can you?
So much more. This is not even touching the surface of anything. Well, let's just say it gets deep and it gets rough, and it's some things are quite distasteful. But this is these years of betrayal. If they can cause the average individual to feel betrayed, by the one they respect in power, right? I'm telling folks right now, this is what they want. Then that person who's been betrayed will not trust their brother. And if you don't trust your neighbor or your brother beside you, then what's your next step? You're gonna start harming that person in some sort of way, or you're gonna cut that person off. They do not want us loving one another. They want that gone. They want us loyal to a system and not loving one another.
You know, I saw there was a comment made by a prominent personality, YouTube personality out of Israel. He's out of Israel, and he was a former IDF commander, and he's involved now with a lot of good organizations. But he does also have connections within the United Nations. He made a statement the other day on Facebook where he sent out a warning on, I don't want to say any individuals' names, but he sent out a warning to a certain individuals because he called them out, said that the individual was basically anti-American, anti-Trump, and anti-Semitic. I saw this statement he made, and then I sat and dwelled on a minute, Mike, and there's people out there who are trying to right now that used to be followers of this great republic we have, this great democracy we've had, and now are trying to turn people away from their leader, from the president or whatever. And I'm not talking politically here, but they're turning people not only against them, but they're turning people against the leaders of Israel, America. It's almost like it's anti-American. And these were people who was on the other side. And do you think this is a deliberate, is this just people going off the deep end, or is there some kind of larger network, a cabal almost?
Yeah, what they're doing is, America stands for freedom, right?
Yeah.
Freedom.
Yes.
If they do not want people to have freedom in the way they see freedom, right? Now, we know by reading the Bible, these ways of freedom are going to slowly erode, right?
Right.
That's for those who don't belong to Christ. Those who don't belong to Christ, they're going to be given over to a system that will, this is just going to chew them up. It'll be their little paradise. They're going to have everything just like they want it, those who are filled with hate and everything else. But there are elements within the U.S., and the number is greater than anyone could ever know. They complicate it too. They complicate it with racism and everything else. And that's a whole other conversation, because once a person can see what's actually happening, they're not going to fall for the hatred anymore. But there are certain individuals, and I'll say it again, you take a good, honest person who is in power, right? You corrupt that individual, having that individual believe in a cause, right? Which means that person would have to be recruited. And they start, when they're children, they start believing in these weird causes, and they start fighting for it, believing that America is not what this guy over here says it is, but what our family or whatever says it is. They begin to fight for this cause with a sort of an upright heart. I'm totally beguiled, right? Which makes our fight even harder, because you won't believe this, Pastor Paul, through ministry. Do you not know that there are certain congressmen who have stepped over the line and they won't go back over? Now, they already know their career is going to be over, but they belong to the Lord now. Do you know that?
Oh, yeah.
And so people can still fight. We can never give up the fight, but there are those who are, God does everything in balance, meaning for every measure of good, we're going to have a measure of darkness so that we can make a choice between the two. God does everything in honesty. He doesn't trick, sneak, or do any of those things. But you have people who just have a stronghold over others. And they use, if they have to threaten their families, if they have to, there was a time when I was nervous about more than a few things. And they will threaten your children's children's children. And here's the problem, though. You know they can do exactly what they're saying they're going to do. But that can scare people out unless you just, you push that throttle forward to say, go ahead, have at it. But you don't do it in a bull type way.
No.
You have to do that with Christ, because if you go head to head with him, you're going to lose every single time. You can't utilize Satan's weapons against Satan. That's not going to work.
No.
We have different weapons of warfare, but yes, those people exist. They do not believe in the democracy we believe in. They say the word democracy, but it does not mean that word democracy. It's not what it means. You can see that with Bernie Sanders. He was a good example. He believes in democracy, but it is socialism, right? It is socialism.
Yeah.
And he knows this.
Yeah,
but he calls it democracy, and he says it's good, and he had all the kids believing it because he kept saying, we're going to pay off your tuition. He said a couple words, we're going to pay off your tuition. This, that. So they thought they were going to get the benefit of Uncle Bernie, right?
Right.
Sharing his whatever. But what he doesn't know is that works in an honest society. Socialism, where everybody is honest, is not socialism. That's called a family, right? It's not socialism.
No.
You don't practice democracy in a family. You share things, right? But that only works with upright and honest people. In this society that we live in, this society is going to have to be reworked. It's going to have to be reworked. There are a handful of dirty people, even in neighborhoods. They assign people to neighborhoods to make sure that they can recruit other folks and have them believe in corrupt causes.
Yeah,
they're out there. They're all over the place.
They're recruiting.
And they corrupt the mindset of individuals, you know.
It seems like the master of all organizing's at work here. It's as, you know, we've seen community organizers. But it seems like right now there's a maestro out there that is building a coalition of groups that, even though they're way out in left field with their cause, they're passionate. They get a lot of young people who are very passionate and clueless of what really is going on. And then but there's a maestro back there. Is that going on? I mean, are we talking about a dozen people that maybe are controlling the whole thing?
No, we're talking, Pastor. We're talking about millions of people in power. We're talking about millions of people.
Right.
We're talking about...
Right, but I mean, there's a hierarchy, right? There's some kind of hierarchy here.
Oh, yeah. And I'm telling you, you know what, though? Here's the bad part. You have your top tier. They worship Satan directly.
Yeah.
Your second tier, third tier, fourth tier people, they worship Satan's emissaries directly. And what I mean by that is they have seen spiritual manifestations of these things. Your other tiers, they communicate spiritually with these things.
Yep.
They're the ones that run your entertainment industry. Those are small fry, but they still serve demonic entities, right?
Yep.
A lot of these entities that have been ancient, they're still walking around in America with these corporations. The corporations, I mean, here's how it works. Here's what Trump is fighting, because he knows it. Right?
Yep.
I'm not here to evaluate the man or anything else, but Trump was a corporate individual, so he knows how corporations work.
Yep.
He knows how the system works. He's been through every loophole he could possibly find, which tells me he's qualified to know all the tricks. Right? A person who knows the tricks is one that was, once diving into them every so often. That's a qualified person. What happens is you have these folks in corporations. They have these secret campaign folks, like in these elections, and they advertise on television. They say, we're going to bolster you, right? So that person gets bolstered. They say, if you can do us just one favor when you get in office, we're gonna make sure you win. You do us one favor, you get in office. So they get in office, and what do? The policies of the U.S. are then bent by these corporations. So these corporations benefit from the policies the president or Congress or whatever is making. So who's in power? Not the president, the corporations are. Right? Before the president ever steps into office, the corporations are already in power. Why? Because they funded the whole thing.
Right.
They have what's called, they have all this, what's called, well, I'm not going to say the name here. They'll shut this whole thing down, but let's just say they have a black marketing group. And we're talking about a dark marketing group, kind of like the dark web. And they raise millions of dollars. They have, instead of a 501c3, they have a 501c4. Or let's just say a 501c off number. It's an actual thing. They're not accountable to anybody. They can do whatever they want to do with the money, right? And they're involved in lobbying. So half the individuals up there, if you start to do your homework, they have been hit by these folks with these 501c, 5s and 4s, and they do things for these corporations. The corporations are in power, but the corporations that they're working for, you have never heard of. We're not talking about GE. We're not talking about Apple and Microsoft and those folks. Those are front companies for the real companies. And believe me, it's a sticky web. These guys are running the White House. So when Trump got in there, right? He got in there and he said, nope, and nope. He made some enemies while he was in there.
Oh.
He wasn't going for two lobbies. I'm sure he goes under pressure and threats and this, that, and the other, but he still steps forward. Right? And it's a very sticky game because they can make you look bad, they can make you look foolish, they can make you look ignorant, but clearly there's a fight going on, right?
Yeah.
And that will evolve, but I have to be sober in all this thing, man. These guys are rotten to the core. They're rotten to the core. And the more qualified they are to run government, it seems like the more corrupt they are. Because if you know, other people can be fooled, but I know in a presidential election, when they're sitting there bragging about all of what they can do, that's just to get people's hearts involved so people start worshiping these folks is what they want. They want the worship of an individual in the ceremony of that presidential election, because that grants spiritual power to these folks to accomplish things that the average ordinary individual wouldn't believe. But yeah, the corporations are the ones who are full of power doing all this.
So, so Mike, what you're saying is there's a deep state, that's unelected officials and people, bureaucracy that's been entrenched in almost every, and probably, yes, every category within our government and other governments. And then there's the hierarchy. What you're talking about is the secret society. And I'm not talking about skull and bones here. I'm talking, well, some of these guys are part of that, yes. But I mean, I'm talking about a group that you're saying funds, that calls the shots, that changes the policies for the corporations that are out there. And most presidents, or at least for the last 40 years, who've been elected, have got some paybacks to do. Trump comes along, says, no, don't want any of your guys' money. The people are going to help support it. I'm going to fund it up front. People are going to help me, and we're going to win. And your point is, he got in there and he's saying no, 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 no. And that's why he was hated from day before he even got in office. Because they're like, if this dude wins, we're not be able to control nothing. So
there you go.
That's what you're saying.
There you go. Because look at the stock market and look at who's gaining, look at who's losing. And I'm telling you, there's some powerful people. They don't want Trump in there. It's just like these protests, this George Floyd situation. Now that began innocently, right? I probably have the same gripe, but you have players that are mingled into the group that have taken control of the groups, right? Through a weakness and through when people are disenfranchised, you have these operatives that go in there and they take advantage of the whole thing. So society within itself is in America is really on the edge, and hopefully all the Christians can keep their wits about them.
No, they're listening, Mike. They're listening to disinformation agents, some of which say they are Christians. And these guys are spreading wild, vicious, absolute insane rumors. And there's some folks running around buying into it. And you and I know the scripture. We know the Bible. We keep going back to prophecy. We're saying, no, that can't be. That's not what the scripture says. So this is why we have to fight the fight also. Let me ask you a question. This is a question. I've got to get it out. And, there's usually 4 or 5 that I have to ask you. There has been a report. I've seen it. They're talking about New York City is talking about coronavirus SWAT teams coming to a neighborhood near you. In other words, 71 people. If there's a cluster of people coming and getting confirmed to have the virus, and it's a little cluster, maybe it's in a college campus, maybe it's in a subdivision, all of a sudden SWAT teams of hazmat suit medical professionals are going to converge, start checking people's temperatures, swabbing people, knocking on doors, saying, look, we got to check you. Is this something that's actually coming? This is being talked about a lot in New York and other places. What's your take on this?
Pastor, I know that most people think it's not happening, but in a few parts of the U.S. it's already taking place. That very thing you just said is taking place already. So yeah, I'd say, that's coming to all the major cities, all of them. And in fact, we'll see what's going to happen within the next 10 days. If these cities are not conformed, you're going to see a reaction, a federal reaction within 10 days. Is it going to be pretty? Probably not. But you'll see that reaction within the next 10 days. We have the kids going back to school. We know the numbers are going to go up, right? And the legal component of this thing against the people they're going to make it uncomfortable for the people with an idea to save the people at the same time. Again, hopefully people keep their wits about them and stay, anchored.
Does
their eyes will see some things they don't want to see. And
does the president have? Who's calling this shot? Is it the CDC?
No, it's not CDC. You have, Pastor. There's it gets so intertwined. You know what? Actually, to tell you how it works is probably not a good thing without a precept to say right here now, because that would just leave a hornet's nest wide open. It's because it's
All right.
We don't have enough time.
All right. You're saying we're 10 days away from this thing, so let's bring it up again next week, but carefully.
Yeah, we might want to, because we'll be right there at the door.
Unless it's something that is too inflammatory, and I can't bring it out here because of the censorship police don't like it,
Yeah, well, no, we can say it. It just takes a precept so that an understanding is given to it.
Okay.
Because sometimes people can run away with small sound bites, and there you go. We can't. This one would be because it's dealing with something very real. Sound bites are no good for this.
We'll let you articulate that next week. And that sounds like you just dropped the bomb. That must have been the bomb. 10 days away from this change. They've already changed the flag in Mississippi. It looks nice. It's softer. It's kinder. It does say "In God We Trust." So are we starting to see a cultural change when we see a flag change?
Well, we'll see how the people vote on it. If they vote it down, they're back to square one. But if they vote it through, I'd say yeah. Because Mississippi is one of those states that everybody's going to look at for this flag, and if the people vote it through, you're going to have some other states follow suit with that. So they're certainly leading the way in this one. So we'll find out. If they vote no, they're not going to have that flag. They have to start the exact process over again. Puts it back another year. So we'll see.
Mike, thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you, Lord willing, next Thursday night.
Hopefully, I'm sure I'll be here, Pastor Paul. Hope everybody's ready for this week coming up.
All right. We're going to be ready, prayed up. We're going to be prayed up. I'm going to stay ready to go up.
All right. Pastor Paul, it's always a pleasure.
Okay. God bless you, Mike.